on the Good Place bench. I'm Kristen from Placemaking, and super happy to be joined here beside me with Andrew from Reactivate Consulting. And we're on day 3 of Placemaking Week.
Yep.
I'd love to start off with Andrew, you introducing yourself for those that will be watching and listening to this video afterwards.
Sure, thanks Kristen. So Andrew from Reactivate Consulting, based in Sydney, Australia, but we work around the world, particularly in Asia, being so close to Australia, and even in Europe more recently. We're an urban strategy and placemaking agency. We do a lot of cultural consulting, nighttime economy consulting, activation programming. We even design and implement the odd festival. We're big believers in creating really tangible connections between communities as strategy practitioners, but practitioners that also actually implement and run places. Because without knowing how to run a place and build a community, how can you write a strategy? So that's kind of the core nexus of what we do. Absolutely fantastic to be here and meet the Good Place team.
Super nice, yeah. You're more than talking the talk. You're walking the walk. You're putting the chairs together. You're setting things up. I'm so curious. What is actually your background? Do you have something related to placemaking or bringing people together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So my background is actually working in development. I spent a good sort of 10 years after I left university working for a very large Japanese developer and then a very large Australian developer. And whilst they did really good design and great development, we observed this kind of key thing that was missing, which was the lack of consideration towards building community and actually spending time creating great places. Traditionally in places like Australia, developers build, they sell or lease a project and leave. And there's no kind of long-lasting longevity. And so we set out to kind of almost create an agency that can help private developers, but also government, build places that actually are tangibly successful, vibrant, and really good places to live. And we still work with many of those kind of organisations to this day. So that's kind of our background and where we came from.
Very cool. Hey, so I'm curious, you had shared earlier that you're based in Sydney, but you also do projects in Asia. And of course, with placemaking, you're getting all types of stakeholders involved. Can you maybe speak to a bit of the, basically difference in sort of strategies for placemaking tactics if you were to compare, for example, a project you have in Sydney to one in another country that you have done work in?
Yeah, that's a really good question because placemaking is about community and communities differ around the world. I'm lucky that I speak another language, being Japanese, and so it was pretty cool. But when we haven't worked in Japan formally yet, but when we're working in communities where we're not necessarily a local, even in Australia there are communities we work on that we're not from in regional parts of Australia, and we will always find, I suppose, local custodians or I suppose people we can work with that know that community intricately, be it in Europe, be it in Asia, be it in an area of Australia that we're not from, to ensure that we are hearing deeply from a community and engaging as deep as we can from the moment we start working on a community. I kind of laugh. I have some clients that we've worked with over the years. The first thing we say is, we need to talk to the community. They say, oh, Andrew and team, well, we do that. I said, well, it's the most important thing in placemaking, is meeting your community and having the time to hear from them deeply. So that's kind of probably a really important thing we stick by when we work in areas that we're not necessarily from.
I'm curious, is placemaking at the top of the agenda, I guess you can say, within Australia, like new developments, this kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, another really good question. 10, 15, 20 years ago, probably wasn't really a big consideration. In the past 10 years, it's becoming more and more important. One of the things that I think we struggle with, particularly working in Australia on these large projects, is getting involved as early as possible. A lot of people in this conference here at Placemaking Week Europe have sort of mentioned the importance of getting placemakers and place strategists involved as early as possible. That's definitely starting to happen now, and we're getting more and more cut through working on projects from the initial ideation, visioning and master planning, right through construction, all the way through to the keys being handed over, the ribbon being cut and welcoming residents in. One other thing I might mention on that, Kristen, is that especially after COVID, everything changed in Australia. the various tiers of government got more and more involved with proactively helping practitioners and communities create really good places through guides and strategy documents that you can download for free. Even funding major placemaking programs, which is so cool. We were awarded a very large grant from the City of Sydney just after COVID, for example, to revitalise a wonderful place in the middle of Sydney called Surrey Hills. And with that grant money, we designed a festival for children. And it was in line with the City of Sydney's strategy, but also to, I suppose, remember that kids really struggled during COVID, especially in the city. So we're seeing a lot more awesome government stakeholders get involved, and it's really, really great to see that as well.
Very cool, and also nice to hear about getting the children involved.
Yeah.
Maybe can you share a little bit of inspiration? What kind of activations did you do to get the kids involved?
Yeah.
And what was that actually like? Also, if you did any kind of this user research, like you said, first thing you do is talk to the community. Did you have some chats on the bench with a 7-year-old?
Literally, yeah. we did. We spent several weeks when we were designing the strategy for this month-long festival, walking up and down the main street and chatting to people on benches, in parks, at the local markets, going to businesses and hearing what they would like to see with this festival, which was really designed to also help this particular part of Sydney recover from COVID and be activated. We designed something that was really fun because a lot of my partners and our consultant teams, even my original co-founder Matt, we had lived in this suburb of Sydney for a long time. And one of the most popular things in this part of Sydney are doggos, and everyone loves dogs there. So what we did was we designed I suppose an augmented reality trail around the suburb of Surrey Hills, where kids had to find dogs that were decals on windows in the retail stores. And so it was a 1.5 kilometre loop, walking through all the pubs and the nooks and crannies and the laneways and the parks and the shops in this suburb, and every time they found a dog, following the little paw prints on the ground, they could check in and they could get a voucher from the retail store. So it helped tie the kids and their parents to the place, but also celebrate something that was really important about the community, being dogs. Really, really fun.
I love that idea, and such a fun way to get kids involved in exploring their neighborhood. So thank you for that inspiration. I'm curious, have you been to Placemaking Week before?
Yeah, another great question. Not Placemaking Europe, but I have been to Placemaking US. We spoke 5 years ago, right before COVID, at the Placemaking US week in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But my first Placemaking Week Europe, and it's been absolutely fantastic.
Did you gather some inspiration, or if you reflect, now we're on day 3. Any key takeaways that you're going to bring back with you all the way back to Australia?
Oh, there has been so many. I could spend an hour talking about it, but obviously it's wonderful to meet practitioners from all around the world that are here and see an Australasian representation through a few of our friends in the Australasia region. But in terms of takeouts, I think it's really good to hear people being more conscious of measuring the intangible. One of the biggest challenges I think in placemaking, Kristen, is how do we measure what we do? Because placemaking is wonderful, but it can be very warm and fuzzy, and finding great ways to measure the value is so important. We're seeing that's more and more important in Australia and New Zealand, but it's great to see that our European colleagues are finding that a bit tough too. Understanding finance triggers as well. There was a discussion just before from Charles Landry about the importance, I suppose, of understanding funding projects and that cyclical nature of how you finance large property projects and embed good placemaking tools. Probably my favourite that I think is the most important for placemaking is just the power of community. We talk about it a lot in Australia, and it's a really important thing to consider in everything we do. So it's great to see a lot of practitioners in Europe talking about the power of community to bring different communities together. For example, in Rotterdam, a huge amount of migrant communities after all the displacement in the past 10 years, and it's wonderful to see placemaking communities in the Netherlands bringing migrant communities together with existing communities, but also the power of bringing artistic communities together and how, I suppose, the creative class can program and activate and really build tangible connections in a wonderful precincts like this, the Kalipand, which obviously is an old vacant industrial building. So it's really good to see that. They're probably my 3 top learnings, I think.
Very cool. And have you had the chance to also explore Rotterdam a little bit? And do you think Rotterdam is a good place? Would you consider it?
Yeah, look, I've actually been here twice. This is my second time. I came before COVID and absolutely loved Rotterdam. I'm lucky to have some close colleagues that live here, and I've seen the ins and outs of Rotterdam. There's some particularly wonderful, active nighttime streets like the Witstraat. I'm terrible at Dutch, so I hope I pronounce it properly. But small micro precincts like that, through to some of the wonderful architecture. Obviously, being a city that was decimated after the war, and kind of has been rebuilt from scratch. So I'm a big fan of Rotterdam and a big fan of, I suppose, what the Netherlands is doing from an urban design and placemaking point of view. So highly recommend coming to Rotterdam.
There we go. We'll use it in next the promo for city city events. I want to sort of take this conversation a little bit back, speaking about a good place, and you've done quite some traveling, it sounds like, and Sydney is your home, would you say? In your opinion, what really makes a good place? What sort of elements are involved there to you?
Yeah. Another fantastic question, and a very hard question, because the concept of a good place can be subjective. I might like a place that you don't like, for example, but I think a good recipe for a great place is one that considers community and the different needs, aspirations, and wants that are in a community, but also things like infrastructure. Your prototype, the MVP for the Good Place Bench, is a fantastic initiative, and so many great places I see that are successful have good hardware like this to bring communities together. Also, I think a layer of highly considered urban design and master planning is important, but that is not necessarily something that can be done in every place, because places sometimes organically evolve over hundreds and hundreds of years, particularly in places like Europe. I think having a mix of different types of demographics in places is a really great thing to see. We presented yesterday about one of our projects, the Mungo Scott Flour Mill in the inner west of Sydney, and that community was absolutely fantastic because it had not only a mix of demographics that were attracted to that district through different types of housing typologies. So you had downsizers, upsizers, retirees, you had dual income, no kids, single parents, you had young couples, and it made it such an incredibly connected precinct because the public realm we used to bring the community together through a great mix of programming that almost appealed to all those different types of people. And I think that's a really good learning, because it can make any place come together through programming that appeals to lots of different types of people. Programming costs money, and of course that is not something that every community has, but if there's ways to use government grants, philanthropic funding, partnership funding, in-kind donations, they're great ways to make places vibrant and exciting.
Wow, great. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. I think it's something that we can all sort of reflect on, and especially as placemakers, designing new places for all types of stakeholders, and what kind of programming is going to appeal to all these different people. Hey, to close off, I'd love to, this is our 1.0 bench prototype. If you could sort of reimagine a good place bench, what sort of features would you include? Let's say there's no limitations, you can just go as out of the box as possible, and I'd love to hear that, close it off.
Well, something that because I travel a lot for work domestically and internationally, I'm often sitting outside, and I love finding benches that I can sit at, get my laptop out, make a few calls out. So power, I think, is really important. Totally. Either multi country style adapters so you can plug things in, or even just USB outlets for your phone. Being on my phone all day and using it to run our business, I often run out of power. And I love going to sit down on public benches where there's power, be it in a privately owned public space or just a public space run by a government. So a bit of power would be great. Even somewhere where maybe you can put your little coffee cup and sit down, or whip out a university style table. Yeah, where you can put your coffee in, you can sit down and leg rests where you can sit up. That would be cool if you could do that. It'd be the best designed bench in the world. I reckon that would be a pretty great way to make an awesome bench. And I like the way you've kind of designed it so that it can create a space for people to. Yeah. I mentioned earlier about yarning circles in Australia are a wonderfully amazing Indigenous design tool that many communities use, which are circular, so almost like a flat auditorium where people can sit together and talk together as a story. Yeah, almost like a campfire style. Exactly. That is a really great analogy, I think. Yeah, if you could do it like that, so it's sort of semi-round or semi-circle, you could do some wonderful things with it.
Thank you so much for the inspiration and for chatting with me today. And best of luck for the next hours of this conference and safe travels home.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Cheers.
Cool. Thank you.